I'm Troy Kirby with a quick look at the 2022 Washington State Legislative Session. During the 2022 Washington State Legislature, lawmakers developed a restructuring of cannabis revenue appropriations with Engrossed Second Substitute Senate Bill 5796. The bill was first heard on the floor of the Senate on February 14th.
And this bill before you comes out of my own personal experience of having many of my constituents speak to me about, we have this cannabis revenue and I don't see this happen. Where is the money being spent? I thought it was supposed to be spent on this, or this is supposed to be spent on this based on the initiative. But I wanted just to note that what this bill does is it renames it to the Cannabis Dedicated Fund, or dedicated cannabis account, and it restructures to help provide clarity to where the money is being spent right now that comes from cannabis revenues, to help all of us understand where the community benefits are happening and where we might in the future or in the very near future want to increase those investments.
Well, I've struggled with this bill. I've listened. I'm glad some changes were made. I think this bill kind of moves us back to where the initial initiative wanted us to be, and moving some monies around. I think we will be back next year to look at this same thing.
I remember as a mayor and a city councilman, our town struggled with the idea of whether to allow retail marijuana and producers and growers into the town. And at the time, I took the tack that if we were going to get all the problems that might come with legalized marijuana, we ought to at least get some of the benefits.
The bill passed the Senate by a vote of 41-7. The bill then moved on to the House, where it was debated on March 4th.
Those of us who have been around for a while recognize that early on, this was the original intent. That money was supposed to go back to those communities that had retail stores and to help with law enforcement.
We're already increasing the allocation to local governments, and they can decide to use that money for law enforcement if they want through their budgeting process. We're not telling them that they have to spend it on law enforcement, but certainly they can decide that they want to do that.
I don't know if you've watched the news lately, Mr. Speaker, but there's been a lot of armed robberies of these retailers going on all across our state because the bad guys know there's a lot of cash in there. Bad guys also coincidentally know that the police probably aren't going to show up because they can't, because they're stretched out too thin.
I think this is a good idea. You know, there's been some conversations the last couple of years around cannabis and the existing licenses that are there that have not been distributed by the Liquor and Cannabis Board, or folks that have received a license in the past, but they've not been able to find a place with which to open and locate their cannabis business. I believe this provides an incentive to the counties and cities that have allowed cannabis businesses in their cities, but they may have implemented a cap or a moratorium on the number of licenses that can open and exist there. By sweetening the pot, so to speak, a little bit, I think this can encourage counties to take another look at that.
One of the biggest questions I get, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure you've heard similar, is, Walsh, what happened to the marijuana money? And it's not usually asked in the friendliest terms. There is a great amount of frustration, Mr. Speaker, again, as I'm sure you know, among local government entities, government agencies, governments, about what happened to promised funds.
With House amendments, the bill passed 78-18, going back over to the Senate for potential concurrence on March 7th. The House amendments were concurred with the Senate by a vote of 37-12.
The House final version that came off the floor made mostly technical changes to allocations, because as we're trying to build more accountability and transparency, they found a few errors that we made in terms of trying to figure out, where does this money go right now and what are we investing in? They also replaced the term marijuana with the term cannabis throughout the bill. And they did also remove, there was a social equity grants and loans for social equity applicants. They removed the reference to loans and just kept grants.
The bill now moves on to the governor's office, where it has an opportunity to be signed into law. Thank you for watching the 2022 Washington State Legislative Session.